Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank the gentlelady from Texas for yielding, but also for your tremendous leadership and for the Emancipation Trail that you so boldly led. I am just amazed at what you shared with me earlier today and just now on the floor. Because yes, I'm a daughter of Texas. My grandfather was born in 1875, 10 years after. And my grandmother may have been part of the Emancipation Trail. She was born probably in the they left Galveston around 1900.
She would have been part of it at a later time, but that trail, since we know for sure there were no other ways of moving, she had to walk along that semi-developed trail of little cities from Galveston, walk along, drive along in whatever capacity. When I say drive along, horse and buggy and otherwise, that was a trail that freed slaves, ex-slaves, went from Galveston all the way. There was the Reedy AME Church, if I'm correct, one of the historic AME churches where they stopped for refuge, and then they came on up and they sought their way to freedom. They were not going to stay on the plantations. I yield back to the
That sounds like my great-grandmother, Fanny, who I did not know, but my grandfather spoke of her, and I am certain that she was part of that. As I listen to you and look more into my personal family history, Galveston certainly is in my spirit, and I guess that's why each and every year since I was a child, we continue to celebrate Juneteenth as our Liberation Day, our Emancipation Day. Historically, we generally recognize January 1st, 1963, the date of the Emancipation Proclamation, when that was signed, as the end of chattel slavery of African Americans in the United States. However, for generations, African American communities have been celebrating June 19th as a symbolic date representing our freedom from enslavement. As Congresswoman Jackson Lee mentioned, Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston to announce the end of the Civil War. He also declared that the enslaved Africans were now equal in personal rights to that of their four masters, ending the inhumane, barbaric subjugation of African Americans as property that still continued 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. And again, we're not far removed from this history. Citing my grandfather, I have to call his name, Mr. W.C. Parrish, William Calhoun Parrish. He was born in Galveston just 10 years after Granger's Juneteenth announcement. Black Texans began celebrating Juneteenth following this year after year after year for the last 150 years plus. Communities across the nation have created their own traditions and events to honor and commemorate this historic moment as a day of freedom. And it's not just a cultural celebration for African Americans, it's a true testament to the endurance of our democratic ideals of liberty and equality. So we need to pass H.R. 1320, Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, establishing Juneteenth as a federal holiday to further cement the importance of this date in our nation's historical narrative on freedom. And Congresswoman Jackson Lee, thank you again for introducing this legislation, and I'm a proud co-sponsor of it. We must pass this. The last time Congress enacted a federal holiday, I believe it was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and it took nearly 20 years for it to pass. We cannot let this idle. Each year, Juneteenth compels us to confront the darkest chapter in American history, a chapter born in the Middle Passage, continued through slavery, and manifested today through systemic racism. Our nation's racial past has consistently led to inequities in income, education, employment, health care, the wealth gap for African Americans. And so we must use Juneteenth to reflect upon the dehumanization of enslaved Africans in America, but also to honor their legacy, and still we rise. The labor stolen from enslaved Africans built this country. Black people created some of the most cherished national symbols, and all the while merely considered 3/5 of a person under our Constitution. And so we must honor and recognize the millions of men, women, and children lost to the brutality of slavery. As a nation, we must reckon with the true nature and legacy of slavery in the United States and acknowledge how it has allowed a false racial hierarchy to permeate and infect our society today. And that's why, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, it's time to pass H.R. 40, legislation to establish a commission to study and develop reparations, championed again by a great Texan, to repair this damage. Also, my resolution, H.R. 19, calling for truth, racial healing, and transformation. It's way too long. It's past overdue. We must repair this repair this damage and move forward. Thank you again for this evening. I want to thank our CBC Chairwoman Joyce Beatty and our Vice Chair, Mr. Horsford, for this special order tonight. I think it's very important that the history be told of Juneteenth and how it connects to today and systemic racism. And thank you for honoring my ancestors.